My mother snatched my GED books in the library and tossed them into the trash, announcing to everyone that I was a disgrace. I did not scream. I just retrieved one book because it hid something she absolutely could not see. 3 days later, the video went viral. Today she called my daughter again because she saw my net worth. She has no idea that the $200 million is not even the worst thing I have waiting for her. My name is Diana Winfield. Entering the Marrow Glen Public Library at 34 years old, to attend a GED orientation felt less like a fresh start and more like admitting to a crime I did not commit. I kept my head down. I pulled the collar of my trench coat up around my neck, hoping the beige fabric would act as a shield against the prying eyes of a town that fed on gossip like it was oxygen. I did not want to be seen. I just wanted to get the paperwork done. I needed this certificate not because I was uneducated, but because a technicality and a background check for my upcoming board appointment required a completed high school transcript, something I had walked away from 17 years ago. The air inside smelled of old paper and floor wax. It was a smell that usually brought me peace, but today it made my stomach turn. I clutched my canvas tote bag against my chest. Inside were the prep books I had bought online: mathematics, science, social studies, reasoning through language arts. They were heavy, clunky things that screamed second chance to anyone who looked at them. I was reaching for the sign-in sheet when the automatic doors behind me slid open with a sharp hiss. I did not need to turn around to know who it was. The aggressive click of expensive heels on the linoleum floor was a sound coded into my nervous system. It was the rhythm of judgment. Marjorie Winfield did not walk. She marched. My mother looked impeccable. She wore a tailored navy blazer that probably cost more than the librarian's car, and her silver hair was coiffed into a helmet of perfection. She was the picture of the grieving, long-suffering mother of a disappointment. That was the role she played for the church group and the charity auxiliary. To everyone else in Marrow Glen, Marjorie was a saint who had done her best with a rebellious daughter. I froze, pen hovering over the paper. "Diana," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a pitch that cut through the quiet hum of the library like a serrated knife. I turned slowly. "Hello, Mother?" She did not return the greeting. Her eyes, cold and sharp as blue glass, darted to the canvas bag in my arms. She stepped into my personal space, bringing with her the scent of lavender and icy disapproval. Before I could react, she reached out and snatched the strap of the bag from my shoulder. "Give me that," she hissed. I reached for it, but I was too slow. I was always too slow when it came to her. She upended the bag right there in the middle of the lobby. The sound was thunderous in the quiet room. The heavy textbooks hit the hard floor with a chaotic slap. The spine of the science book cracked. The math workbook slid across the tiles, coming to rest at the feet of a teenager wearing headphones. The entire room went dead silent. The librarian, a woman I recognized as Mrs. Gable, stood up from her desk, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. Marjorie did not care. She kicked the pile of books, scattering them further. "Stop pretending." "Diana," she said, her voice rising now, ensuring an audience. "You are 34 years old. Do you think buying these books changes who you are? You think this proves you are not useless?" I stood there, my hands empty, feeling the heat rise up my neck. It was not a shame. It was a cold, hard rage that I had learned to swallow years ago. "You are not the kind of person who finishes things," Marjorie announced, gesturing at the mess on the floor. "You are an embarrassment to this family. You always have been. Your brother is building a legacy, and you are here playing school. It is pathetic." A few people gasped. I saw a phone go up in the peripheral vision of my left eye. A young man in a gray hoodie was recording. Good. Let him record. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not beg her to stop making a scene. That was the old Diana. The Diana she thought she was destroying. I slowly crouched down. I ignored the science book with its torn cover. I ignored the math book that she had kicked. My eyes locked onto a thin, spiral-bound notebook that had slid partially under a display table. To Marjorie, it looked like just another study guide. To me, it was the only thing that mattered. I reached out and picked it up. dusting off the cover with a deliberate, calm motion. Inside that notebook were not algebra equations. Inside were the encrypted access codes to my offshore accounts and the final compliance reports for the acquisition of Ledger Nest Systems. Mrs. Gable finally found her voice. "Ma'am, you need to leave," she said, stepping around her desk. "You cannot cause a disturbance here." Marjorie straightened her blazer, looking at the librarian with a mix of pity and disdain. "I am leaving. I just wanted to make sure my daughter understood her place." She looked at me one last time, a smirk touching her lips. "Don't bother coming to Sunday dinner. Diana, we are celebrating Grant's promotion. We don't need the mood spoiled by your failures." She turned and walked out, the click of her heels fading into the parking lot. The silence she left behind was heavy. The boy with the phone lowered it, looking at me with wide, sympathetic eyes. He thought he had just witnessed a tragedy. He thought he had seen a woman get broken. I stood up, holding the notebook against my side. I looked at Mrs. Gable. "I am sorry about the mess," I said. My voice was steady. I did not pick up the other books. I left them there, a monument to Marjorie's cruelty. I turned and walked through the sliding doors, stepping out into the biting wind of the Midwest afternoon. I walked to my sedan, a reliable, nondescript model that blended in with the pavement. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. The silence inside the car was a sanctuary. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I picked it up. It was a text message from a number saved only as Miles. "Are you sure you want to file that today, once we submit the dossier? There is no going back." I looked at the text. I thought about the way the science book had sounded when it hit the floor. I thought about the smirk on Marjorie's face. She thought she had thrown away my future. She had no idea she had just publicly assaulted the CEO of the company that just bought her son's employer. I typed back 2 words, "File it." Then I opened my calendar app. The schedule for the next 48 hours stared back at me, stark and undeniable. 9 in the morning, Miles Arden, legal counsel. 11 in the morning, First National Bank, asset consolidation. 2 in the afternoon, board of directors call. Ledger, Nest Systems. I started the engine. Marjorie had wanted to make me famous in Marrow Glen. She had wanted everyone to know my name. Be careful what you wish for. Mother, you just lit the match. But I am the one holding the gasoline. The silence in my car was heavy, but it was mine. That was the difference between now and 17 years ago. Back then, silence was something I had to steal in 5-minute increments while hiding in the bathroom or the pantry. People always assume that dropping out of high school requires a massive, catastrophic event. They imagine a pregnancy, an arrest, or a drug problem. They want a scandal because scandals are easy to understand. But my exit from the 11th grade was not an explosion. It was a slow, deliberate erosion. It was death by 1,000 chores. I remember the exact Tuesday I stopped going. It was mid-October. Grant, my older brother, had varsity football practice, and he was struggling with AP history. Marjorie had decided that the household revolved entirely around Grant's potential. He was the sun, and the rest of us were just dust motes caught in his gravity. I had a chemistry midterm the next day. I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to balance equations, when Marjorie walked in and dropped a basket of Grant's dirty gym clothes on top of my textbook. She did not ask me to wash them. She just said, "He needs the white jersey for the pep rally tomorrow, and don't shrink it like you did his socks." Then she walked away to pour herself a glass of wine. It was always like that. If the dishwasher needed emptying, it was Diana's job because Grant was studying. If the lawn needed raking, it was Diana's job because Grant needed to rest his throwing arm. I was not a daughter. I was a support staff member with no salary and no days off. I washed the jersey. I failed the chemistry test. And 3 weeks later, when the school called to ask why I had missed 6 days in a row, Marjorie told the guidance counselor that I was going through a difficult phase and that I was not really academic material. She shaped the narrative before I even knew there was a story being told. To the neighbors, Grant was the prodigy, and Diana was the one who just couldn't cope with the pressure of high school. It was a lie that protected her reputation and absolved her of the fact that she had turned her teenage daughter into a live-in maid. I tried to go back twice in my 20s. The first time, I was 22, working double shifts at a diner. I ordered the study guides and had them sent to the house because I was between apartments. Marjorie opened the package. When I came to get them, she laughed a dry, brittle sound that made my skin crawl. She told me I was wasting my money, that I should focus on finding a husband because I clearly did not have the brains for a career. The books disappeared 2 days later. She claimed she thought they were trash. The second time, I actually enrolled in night classes. But suddenly, Marjorie had a health crisis, phantom chest pains, that required me to drive her to appointments at all hours, exactly when my classes were scheduled. The pains mysteriously vanished the moment I withdrew from the semester. So, I left. I did not run away in the middle of the night. I just slowly moved my life into boxes and drifted out of their orbit. I took jobs that required grit rather than degrees. I filed papers, I answered phones, I cleaned offices, and eventually, I landed at Larkwell Compliance Group. Larkwell was perfect for someone like me. It was a company that thrived on the invisible details. We handled risk assessment and regulatory compliance for mid-sized corporations. It was dry, boring work to most people. But I loved it. I loved the rules. I loved that if you followed the process, you got the correct result. There was no ambiguity, no favoritism, no golden child. There was just data. I started as a data entry clerk. I stayed late. I read every regulation manual in the archive. I found mistakes that senior analysts missed. I moved up, not by being loud, but by being indispensable. My lack of a degree was an embarrassing footnote in HR's file, one they overlooked because I made the company too much money to fire. But now, things are different. The GED was no longer about proving Marjorie wrong. It was a tactical necessity. The plan I had been building for the last 5 years, the acquisition, the merger, the new identity of my own holding company was reaching its final stage. To take my seat on the board of the new conglomerate without triggering a vote of no confidence from the legacy shareholders, my background check had to be spotless. A missing high school diploma was a loose thread, and in my line of work, you do not leave loose threads. You cut them, or you tie them off. That was why I was at the library. That was why I needed this done quietly. I looked down at the passenger seat where my phone sat. A notification popped up from Renee Carver. Saw the video. I am so sorry. D, do you want me to come over? I have wine and a very angry cat that hates everyone, which feels appropriate. I allowed myself a small, tired smile. Renee was the coordinator for the adult education program. She was 50 years old, wore oversized cardigans, and smoked menthols behind the dumpster during breaks. She was the first person in my life who looked at my lack of a diploma and didn't see a tragedy. She saw a logistics issue. We had met 6 months ago when I first inquired about the accelerated testing program. We had gone for coffee at the diner down the street from the center. I had been nervous, stammering about why a woman in her 30s, driving a luxury sedan, needed a GED. Renee had just stirred her black coffee and looked me dead in the eye. "Diana," she had said, her voice raspy and warm. "Stop explaining. The world is full of educated idiots. This piece of paper. It is not a key to the city. It is just a door handle. You get it so you can close the door in the past and lock it. That way, nobody can walk back in and tell you who you used to be." It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. A door to close. That was all I wanted. I wanted to close the door on the girl who washed football jerseys. I wanted to close the door on the girl who believed she was stupid. That was why what happened today cut so deep. It was not just an embarrassment. Marjorie had kicked that door wide open. She had dragged me out of the safe, curated life I had built at Larkwell, and thrown me back into the mud in front of strangers. She had made me a spectacle. For 17 years. I had worked to be invisible. I wore neutral colors. I spoke in a low voice. I never bragged. I accumulated wealth in silence, investing every bonus, every stock option, Every dividend into a portfolio that grew in the dark like a mushroom. I wanted power. Yes, but I wanted the kind of power that didn't require applause. Marjorie needed the applause. She needed the lights. And today, she tried to burn me to keep her spotlight bright. I put the car in drive. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The anger was settling now, turning into something cold and solid in my chest. It felt like steel. Renee was right. The degree was a door. But Marjorie had made a mistake. She thought she was shaming a dropout. She didn't realize she was declaring war on a woman who scrutinized billion-dollar contracts for a living. I knew where the bodies were buried because I was the one who knew how to read the maps. Marjorie. She had been leaving a paper trail of her own for years. She just didn't know that her daughter, the failure, was the only one in the family who knew how to read the fine print. I pulled out of the parking lot, the gravel crunching under my tires. I was not going home to cry. I had a meeting with a lawyer, and I had 17 years of receipts to organize. The drive from the library to my house was a blur of gray asphalt and white knuckles. I did not turn on the radio. I did not cry. Crying was a luxury for people who had someone to comfort them. And I had learned a long time ago that I was my own cavalry. When I finally stepped into my home, the silence was different. It was not the oppressive silence of the Winfield house, where the air always felt thick with unsaid criticisms. This was the silence of control. My house was a modern glass and steel structure tucked away in a gated community 20 minutes outside of Marrow Glen. To the neighbors, I was a quiet consultant who traveled often. To the world of high-stakes corporate compliance, I was a ghost who fixed problems before they became headlines. I walked straight to my office, threw my trench coat on the leather sofa, and placed the dirty notebook on my mahogany desk. It was stained, a smear of something sticky, perhaps soda from the library trash can, marred the bottom corner. I stared at it for a long moment. That notebook contained the encrypted seed phrases for my cryptocurrency holdings and the physical location of a safe deposit box in Zurich. Marjorie had thrown it in the garbage like it was a used napkin. I took a wet wipe and carefully cleaned the cover. The motion was rhythmic, soothing, clean the mess, assess the damage, formulate a plan. I unlocked my phone and dialed Miles Arden. He picked up on the first ring. Miles was the kind of lawyer who cost $600 an hour and was worth every penny. He handled reputation management for politicians and hostile takeovers for tech giants. My mother's library tantrum was beneath his pay grade, but I was his biggest client. I saw the text, Miles said. His voice clipped and professional. I am already drafting the filing for the name change and the final suppression of your personal address from public records. But I need to know the temperature of the room. Diana. I looked at the clean notebook. The temperature is freezing. Miles? There was a pause on the line. Then he asked the question that would define the next week of my life. Do you want justice? Or do you want to ensure she can never do this again? Justice implies I want an apology. I said, walking over to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the woods. I do not want an apology. An apology is just words. Marjorie is a master of words. She can twist an apology into an accusation before you even realize you have been stabbed. Then what is the objective? Miles asked. I want to take away her ability to play the victim. I said, I want to cut off her supply. She feeds on the sympathy of this town. She uses her reputation as the saintly mother of a wayward daughter to gain social capital. I want to bankrupt that capital. Understood, Miles said. The scorched earth approach. It is cleaner, honestly. But to do that, we need leverage. We need to prove malice. I have leverage, I said. Just then, my phone pinged with a notification. It was Renee. Do not watch this if you are driving, but you need to see what the internet sees. She had sent a video file. I put Miles on speaker. Hang on, I said. I tapped the play button. The video was shaky at first, filmed from a low angle, likely from a phone resting on a table or a lap, but the audio was crystal clear. Con. You are not the kind of person who finishes things. Marjorie's voice echoed in my quiet office. On the screen, I saw myself small, hunched in my coat, and I saw her. She looked massive, a looming tower of navy blue wool and rage. The video showed her snatching the bag. It showed the violent, deliberate way she upended it. It showed her kicking the math book. This was not a mother scolding a child. This was a bully assaulting a target. I watched it twice. The second time, I analyzed it not as a daughter, but as a compliance officer. Look at her body language. I told Miles, she is aggressive. She initiates physical contact. She destroys property. This is not a misunderstanding. This is harassment. I can work with this, Miles said, the sound of typing clicking in the background. I can file for a restraining order based on domestic harassment. It establishes a legal precedent. If she comes near you again, she goes to jail. File it. I said, but do not serve her yet. I want the element of surprise. We need more than just the video. Miles continued, if we are going to dismantle her reputation, we need to attack the foundation. I ran a deep dive on your credit history, just to make sure the background check for the board seat would be clear. My heart skipped a beat. Is there a problem? There is an anomaly, Miles said slowly. I found an old revolving credit line with First National Bank. It was opened 15 years ago. It maxed out at $12,000 and was paid off in minimum increments over a decade. It was closed 3 years ago. I frowned. 15 years ago, I was 19. I was working at a diner and living in a studio apartment above a garage. I did not have credit. I paid for everything in cash. The account lists your name and your social security number, Miles said. But the billing address was not your apartment. It was the Winfield family home on Elm Street. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I never opened that account. Miles, I know, he said. The signature on the digital archive does not match the one on your current legal documents. It looks like a forgery. A decent one, but a forgery. I sat down in my leather chair. The pieces were clicking together with a sickening precision. 15 years ago was right after I moved out. It was when Marjorie started renovating the kitchen. She had complained for months about the cost of granite countertops, and then suddenly, the complaint stopped. She used my name. I whispered. She stole my identity to pay for her kitchen. That is a felony. Diana, Miles said, his voice dropping an octave. Identity theft. Wire fraud. If we can prove she opened it, this stops being a family dispute and becomes a federal crime. I closed my eyes. For years, Marjorie had called me irresponsible. She had told everyone I was bad with money, that I could not be trusted. All the while, she was ruining my credit score to buy appliances. She projected her sins onto me. I said, anger heating my blood. She trashed my name to cover her tracks. If everyone thought I was a financial disaster, no one would look twice at a defaulted payment in my name. Exactly, Miles said. Do you want me to flag this with the fraud department? Not yet, I said, my mind racing. If we flag it now, she will claim it was a mistake. She will say she was helping me build credit and simply forgot. She will cry. She will manipulate the narrative. We need hard proof. We need the original application paperwork. I'm going to the bank tomorrow. I told him, I will get the physical copies. Good, Miles said. And Diana. The board meeting is in 48 hours. If this news breaks that you are suing your own mother for fraud, the stock price of Ledger Nest might wobble. Investors get nervous about family drama. Let them wobble, I said, staring at the dirty notebook. I built this company on risk management. I am just mitigating a long-term liability. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time as the sun went down, casting long shadows across my office. Marjorie thought she had won today. She thought she had shamed me back into my box. She thought the video would humiliate me. She was wrong. The video was not a weapon against me. It was the first piece of evidence in the trial of Marjorie Winfield. I opened my laptop and pulled up the calendar for the Marrow Glen Community Center. I knew Marjorie was on the planning committee for their annual fundraising gala. It was her pride and joy. It was where she held court. I saw the date. The gala was in 4 days. I looked back at the video paused on my phone. Marjorie's face was twisted in a sneer. She wanted to make our relationship public. She wanted to perform for an audience. Fine. I picked up the dirty notebook and placed it in my safe, locking the heavy steel door with a satisfying clank. "You want a show?" "Mother," I said to the empty room, "I will give you a show. But this time, I am the one writing the script, and I am the one controlling the lighting. And when the spotlight hits you this time, it is not going to be flattering, it is going to be an interrogation lamp." The Marrow Glen Adult Learning Gala was less of a charity event and more of a coronation ceremony for the town's social climbers. Every year, the local elite gathered in the rented ballroom of the wildest country club to drink lukewarm Chardonnay and pat themselves on the back for helping the less fortunate. For Marjorie Winfield, this was her Super Bowl. She was the chairwoman of the planning committee, which meant she controlled the microphone, the guest list, and the narrative. I sat in my home office, staring at the digital donor application form on my laptop. The cursor blinked in the field marked Name of Donor. I typed anonymous. Then I moved to the amount field. I entered $25,000. It was enough money to fund the entire GED program for a year. It was also enough money to buy me absolute creative control. I hit enter. The transaction cleared instantly. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Renee. "You are insane," she said, skipping the hello. "The board just got an alert. $25,000, Diana. Are you trying to buy a stairway to heaven?" "I am not buying heaven," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I am buying the projector screen." I explained the second part of my plan. I told Renee that I wanted to offer my professional services to the gala committee. My cover story was simple and technically true. I told her to tell the board that the anonymous donor had a representative who specialized in corporate compliance and event logistics, and this representative wanted to ensure the evening ran smoothly. Renee hesitated. "You know your mother is going to be running the show, right? She will be micromanaging everything down to the color of the napkins. Let her micromanage the napkins." I said, "I want the audio-visual system. I want the run of the show. Tell them I am handling the presentation to ensure the donor's privacy is protected." By noon, the committee had agreed. They were desperate. Apparently, their usual tech guy had quit 2 days ago, and they were terrified of messing up the presentation for such a massive donation. I logged into the event planning portal using the credentials Renee sent me. I was in. I had access to the schedule, the speaker list, and most importantly, the digital file repository for the evening's slideshow. Then I saw Marjorie's Facebook post. It popped up on my burner account feed. She had posted a selfie, smiling broadly with her perfect teeth, holding a glass of iced tea. The caption read, "So blessed to announce that our hard work has paid off. A major donor has recognized the excellence of our committee. God is good. Big things are coming this Saturday." She was taking credit for my money. It was so predictable it was almost boring. She had no idea that the blessing she was bragging about was actually a subpoena wrapped in a check. I decided to start reviewing the budget files uploaded to the portal. It was a habit I could not break. At Larkwell, I spent 12 hours a day looking for patterns in numbers, searching for the story that the data was trying to hide. I opened the folder labeled expenses. Most of it was standard: catering, venue rental, security. Then I saw the invoice for decor and floral arrangements. The total was $8,500. I frowned. I knew the vendor listed Marrow Glen Petals. It was a small shop on Main Street run by a woman named Sarah who charged very reasonable rates. $8,000 for a 3-hour event in a mid-sized ballroom was exorbitant. I opened the next file. Consulting fee. Event coordination. $3,000 paid to a company called Winfield Stylistic Solutions. I froze. There was no such company registered in the state business database. I knew because I had the registry open in another tab. I pulled up the invoice for the flowers again. It looked legitimate at first glance, but the font on the total amount was slightly different from the font on the itemized list. It was a pixelated mismatch that 99% of people would miss, but I was in the 1% who looked. I picked up my phone and called Marrow Glen Petals. "Hi, this is Diana calling from the gala coordination team," I said, keeping my voice bright and administrative. "I am just reconciling the accounts for this Saturday. I have an invoice here for $8,500. I just wanted to confirm the delivery time. There was a long pause on the other end. Ma'am, the florist asked, sounding confused. You must have the wrong invoice. The quote Mrs. Winfield approved was for $2,000. We are just doing centerpieces. My blood ran cold, then hot. 2,000. I repeated, do you have a copy of that invoice you could email me? Just for my records. 2 minutes later, I had the real invoice. Marjorie had altered the document. She had inflated the cost by $6,500 and pocketed the difference. And that fake consulting company, that was likely a direct line to her personal checking account. She was not just stealing my identity. She was embezzling from the charity she claimed to love. I called Miles immediately. I found something. I said, be careful. Diana, Miles warned, his voice steadying me. Irregularities are not proof of intent. She could claim it was a clerical error. She could claim she paid cash for the difference and was reimbursing herself. You cannot accuse her publicly without a smoking gun. I have the florist on record. I said, and I'm looking at a shell company she created to bill the charity for consulting fees. Miles, she is skimming off the top. She is using the gala to pay for her lifestyle. Document everything. Miles said, do not confront her yet. We need a chain of custody for these documents. Download the metadata. Prove that the edits came from her computer. I spent the next 3 hours digging. I found 3 more inflated invoices, the DJ, the linen rental, the printing service. In total, Marjorie Winfield had siphoned off nearly $12,000 from the gala budget over the last 2 years. She was stealing from people who were trying to get their high school diplomas. She was stealing from people like me. I sat back, looking at the spreadsheet I had created. It was a map of her greed. I opened the presentation file for the gala. I had a slot reserved for the donor representative speech. It was supposed to be a 5-minute generic talk about the importance of education. I began to type out a script. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to talk about the cost of education, and tonight, we are going to look at the receipts. I deleted it. No, too aggressive. I needed to be the Trojan horse. I needed to walk onto that stage looking like the angel of mercy, so that when I dropped the hammer, the shock would be absolute. I rewrote the speech. It was beautiful. It was touching. It talked about second chances and the quiet dignity of learning. It was exactly the kind of speech Marjorie would nod along to. Right up until the moment I destroyed her. I saved the file. Then I uploaded a second file to the AV system. I hid it in a subfolder, password protected, named Backup Slides. Inside that folder were the screenshots of the altered invoices. Inside that folder was the side-by-side comparison of the florist's bill and the one Marjorie submitted. I checked my watch. It was 9 at night. Marjorie was probably at home, trying on dresses, thinking about how much praise she would get on Saturday. She thought she was the queen of Marrow Glen. She did not realize that the auditor was coming, and the auditor was her daughter. The ballroom of the Marrow Glen Country Club was draped in gold and white silk. It smelled of expensive perfume and roasted chicken. This was the stage Marjorie Winfield had built for herself. She moved through the crowd in a shimmering emerald gown that I knew cost $3,000 because I had seen the withdrawal from the charity account disguised as stage drapery in the ledger. I stood near the entrance, leaning against a pillar. I wore a simple black dress, tailored but unflashy, with my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I was the shadow in a room full of peacocks. Marjorie spotted me almost immediately. She paused in the middle of a laugh, her glass of champagne halfway to her mouth. She excused herself from the mayor's wife and glided over to me, her smile tight and predatory. "I am surprised you showed up," she said, her voice low enough that the nearby waiters could not hear. "Did you come to apologize? Or did you run out of money for your little study books?" I looked at her calmly. "I came to support the cause." "Mother, education is important," she scoffed. "Do not make a scene. Diana, if you sit quietly in the back, I might let you take a plate of leftovers home. Just do not speak to anyone important." She turned her back on me and returned to the center of the room, basking in the adoration of her peers. She thought I was defeated. She thought I was there to beg. Half an hour later, The lights dimmed. Marjorie took the stage, the spotlight reflecting off her diamond earrings. She gave a passionate speech about the sanctity of learning, about how the community needed to lift up those who had fallen behind. It was a masterclass in hypocrisy. The audience clapped politely. Then, the master of ceremonies, a local weatherman named Tom, stepped up to the microphone, and now, he announced, consulting a card in his hand, "We have a very special surprise. Tonight, we received a donation that fully funds our scholarship program for the next 5 years. Please welcome our platinum sponsor, Ms. Diana Winfield." The silence that followed was absolute. It was not the respectful silence of anticipation. It was the shocked silence of a room trying to process a glitch in reality. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like a brush fire. Marjorie froze on stage. Her smile stayed plastered on her face, but her eyes went wide and vacant, like a deer staring down a semi-truck. I stepped out from the shadows. I walked down the center aisle, the sound of my heels steady on the carpet. I did not look at the crowd. I looked straight at the stage. I walked up the stairs, past the stunned MC, and stood next to my mother. "Thank you." "Tom," I said, taking the microphone. Marjorie looked like she wanted to shove me off the platform, but she was trapped by the spotlight and 300 witnesses. She had to stand there and pretend to be a proud mother. I looked out at the sea of faces. For a long time, I thought education was a privilege I had lost. I began, my voice clear and steady. I thought that because I took a different path, I was less than, but I learned that the only true failure is the refusal to help others rise. I gestured to the large screen behind us. That is why, tonight, I am not just writing a check. My company, Larkwell Compliance, will be partnering with the center to provide job placement for every single GED graduate this year. We are not just giving them a diploma, we are giving them a future. The room erupted in applause. Genuine, thunderous applause. I saw Renee in the back, wiping her eyes, but I was not done. However, I continued, and the room quieted down. We must remember why this work is hard. We must remember what these students face. It is not just the difficulty of math or science, it is the judgment. I pressed the clicker in my hand. The screen behind me changed. I had prepared a video montage titled "The Journey." It showed stock footage of tired people on buses, studying late at night at kitchen tables. Soft piano music played. Then, the music cut out. For exactly 2 seconds, the screen flickered to a shaky, vertical video. "Con, you are not the kind of person who finishes things." The audio cracked like a whip. On screen, a woman's hand unmistakably manicured, wearing a distinct emerald ring, shoved a stack of books off a table. The books hit the floor with a violent slap. It lasted only a moment before the inspirational piano music returned, and the screen faded to the charity logo. But the damage was done. A gasp rippled through the front row. They recognized the voice. They recognized the ring. Marjorie was wearing that exact ring right now. Marjorie took a step forward, her face flushing a deep, angry red. She reached for the microphone, her composure cracking. I turned to her, cutting her off before she could speak. I shared that clip not to name names. I said, my voice dropping to a register of profound sadness, but to remind us all, words have power. When we tell someone they are useless, we are not just hurting their feelings, we are trying to erase their future. I am here tonight to say that no one gets to erase us. I turned back to the crowd. Thank you. The ovation this time was deafening. It was not polite. It was emotional. People stood up. They were cheering for the message, but they were also cheering for the woman who had just publicly stood up to a bully without throwing a single punch. I walked off the stage. Marjorie was left standing there, alone under the harsh light. She looked small. She looked mean. The contrast between my generosity and her recorded cruelty was so sharp it could cut glass. People swarmed me as I reached the floor. They wanted to shake my hand. They wanted to thank me. I saw the mayor's wife look at Marjorie with a new expression. It was not admiration anymore. It was suspicious. I navigated the crowd with polite nods, making my way toward the exit. I needed air. As I reached the coat check, a hand clamped onto my arm. The grip was hard, the fingernails digging into my skin. I turned. Marjorie had followed me. Her face was a mask of fury. The benevolent matriarch was gone. "You little witch," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "You humiliated me. You set this whole thing up to make me look like a monster in front of my friends." I gently removed her hand from my arm. I did not shove her. I just unpeeled her fingers one by one. "I did not make you look like anything." "Mother," I said, my voice calm and devoid of emotion, "I gave $25,000 to a charity you claim to care about. I offered jobs to people who need them. If the truth of your own behavior makes you look like a monster, that is not my fault." She stared at me, her chest heaving. "You think you have won? You think money makes you better than me?" I stepped closer, invading her personal space for the first time. "I do not think I am better than you. Marjorie, I just stopped being afraid of you." I leaned in, whispering so only she could hear. "And regarding the humiliation, I did not humiliate you. I just turned on the lights. Whatever ugly things people saw in the room with us, those were there long before I arrived." I turned and walked out the double doors into the cool night air. The valet brought my car around. I got in and drove away, leaving the gala behind. I checked my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Grant and 1 text from Renee. "You didn't just drop the mic, you dropped the whole stage." I allowed myself a small smile. But I knew this wasn't over. Marjorie was wounded, and wounded animals were dangerous. She would not take this lying down. She would try to spin this. She would try to paint me as the villain who ambushed her. Let her try. I had the receipts, and thanks to the metadata I had pulled from the event portal, I knew exactly where the rest of the gala money had gone. The gala was just the opening statement. The cross-examination was about to begin. The fallout was immediate. In the 24 hours following the gala, the internet did what the internet does best. It took a local incident and turned it into a spectacle. Someone had spliced the footage of Marjorie knocking the books out of my hand in the library with the clip of my speech at the gala. They set it to a trending audio track, something bass-heavy and ominous. By Sunday morning, it had 40,000 views on a local community TikTok page. By Sunday afternoon, it had jumped the fence to the neighboring counties. The comments were brutal. "The woman in the blue blazer is a monster. Imagine treating your own kid like that and then asking for donations. I live in Marrow Glen. That lady runs the HOA and she is a nightmare." I sat in my kitchen, drinking black coffee, scrolling through the feed with a detached clinical interest. My face was blurred in most of the clips, thanks to privacy guidelines, but Marjorie's face was in 4K resolution. Her sneer was immortalized. Then came the counteroffensive. My phone pinged with a notification from Facebook. A mutual friend had sent me a screenshot of Marjorie's latest status update. She had posted a picture of herself looking out a window, clutching a rosary, bathed in soft, sad light. The caption read, "My heart is breaking today. It is so painful when a child you love loses their way. My daughter Diana has been struggling with mental health issues for a long time, and unfortunately, she has fallen under the influence of people who want to hurt our family." The scene at the gala was a staged outburst from a girl who needs help, not applause. Please pray for her healing, and pray for us as we navigate this private tragedy. I put the phone down on the granite counter. It was a masterful piece of fiction. In one paragraph, she had dismissed my success, invalidated my generosity, and painted herself as the martyr. She was weaponizing my silence. She was betting that I would be too ashamed to fight back. She bet wrong. I did not comment on the post. I did not engage with the trolls. I called Miles. "Issue the cease and desist." I said, "Are you sure?" Miles asked. "This escalates it from a dispute to a legal war. She just accused me of being mentally unstable on a public forum to discredit a charitable donation." I said, my voice flat, "That is defamation per se. It damages my professional standing. Send the letter." And Miles sent it by courier to her house. I want her to have to sign for it. 2 hours later, A courier bike was speeding toward the Winfield residence, but the real blow came at noon. The package from First National Bank arrived via overnight delivery. I took the thick envelope into my study. I used a letter opener to slice the top. My hands steady but my heart hammering a strange, uneven rhythm against my ribs. Inside were the archived records Miles had requested. The application for the credit card opened 15 years ago. I pulled out the original contract. There it was, my name, my social security number, my date of birth, and at the bottom, the signature, Diana Winfield. I stared at it. It was a good attempt. To a bank teller who did not know me, it looked legitimate, but I knew the hand that wrote it. I knew the way the loop of the D curled slightly too far to the left. I knew the sharp, aggressive strike of the T cross. I had seen that handwriting on permission slips. I had seen it on chore lists taped to the refrigerator. Marjorie had not just opened an account. She had practiced my signature. She had sat down, likely at the kitchen table while I was at work, and learned how to become me so she could spend money she did not have. I turned the page to the statements. The charges were mundane, which made them worse. There were no emergencies, no medical bills. Marrow Glen Landscaping, $2,000. Elite Drapery Blinds, $3,500. Nordstrom, $800. She had used my credit to buy curtains. She had destroyed my financial standing at the age of 18 so she could have silk drapes in the living room. She had valued her window treatments more than her daughter's future. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This wasn't just bad parenting. This was financial cannibalism. My phone rang, shattering the silence. The caller ID showed Grant. I stared at the screen for a moment before swiping green. "Hello? Grant? You have lost your mind," he shouted. There was no greeting, just immediate volume. "Mom is a wreck. Diana. She is crying in the kitchen because a process server just handed her a threat to sue. Are you serious? It is a cease and desist." "Grant," I said calmly, "it is not a lawsuit yet. It is a warning to stop lying about me on the internet." "She is your mother," he yelled. "You embarrassed her in front of the whole town, and now you are trying to gag her. You are tearing this family apart over some stupid high school grudge." I looked down at the credit card application on my desk. "It is not a grudge, Grant. It is a crime scene." "What are you talking about?" I picked up the paper. "Grant, do you remember when you got your first apartment, the one on 4th Street? "I don't see what that has to do with anything," he snapped. "You had trouble getting approved for the lease," I reminded him. "You told me your credit score was surprisingly low, even though you had never had a credit card. Mom told you it was probably just a glitch and co-signed for you. She played the hero." There was a pause on the line. "Yeah. So what I am looking at a credit application from 15 years ago." I said, "It is in my name, but the handwriting is hers. She maxed it out by buying landscaping and clothes. She tanked my credit score before I could even legally drink." "That is a lie," Grant said. But his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" I asked. "I'm going to send you a picture of the signature. You tell me if that looks like me, or if it looks like the person who signs your birthday cards." I heard his breathing hitch on the other end. "Grant," I said, my voice dropping, "if she did it to me, the scapegoat, do you really think she didn't do it to you? The golden child. You have always had glitches with your finances. You always needed her to co-sign. Have you ever checked your full credit history, or did you just trust her when she said she was handling it?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. "I didn't do this to hurt the family. Grant," I said, "I did this because I woke up. You should check your records." I hung up. I did not wait for him to call back. I took photos of the documents. I scanned them into a secure PDF. I attached them to an email addressed to Miles. Subject: Evidence of fraud. Identity theft. Body. "Here's the proof. The signature is forged. Proceed with the affidavit for the fraud investigation." I hit send. By Tuesday evening, the atmosphere in Marrow Glen had shifted. Renee texted me to say that Marjorie had been quietly removed from the admin list of the church charity group. The Ladies' Auxiliary had postponed their weekly brunch indefinitely. Marjorie was losing her audience. The defamation letter had scared her into silence on Facebook. But the silence was doing more damage than her words. Without her ability to spin the story, people were left with the raw footage of her cruelty and the undeniable fact of my generosity. But Marjorie Winfield did not know how to lose. I received a Google alert on Wednesday morning. It was a press release from a small, boutique PR firm in the city. Marjorie Winfield, to host an intimate press conference to discuss the truth about family addiction and recovery. I stared at the screen. She was doubling down. She wasn't just going to lie on Facebook anymore. She was going to hold a press conference. She was going to try to paint my success as the manic spending of an addict, and her theft as managing my finances for my own good. She was going to try to turn my wealth into a symptom of illness. She thought a PR firm could fix this. She thought she could charm the cameras one last time. She did not realize that by inviting the press, she was inviting scrutiny, and she had no idea that I wasn't just armed with a GED study guide anymore. I was armed with forensic accounting. "Go ahead, Mother," I whispered to the screen. "Set up the podium." Because I was about to bring the one thing she couldn't spin. I was about to bring the police report. The headline that changed everything dropped at 6 in the morning on a Thursday. It did not appear on the gossip pages or the local community bulletin board. It appeared in the Midwest Tech Chronicle and the Wall Street Journal's Deal Book newsletter. To most people in Merrow Glen, the headline would have looked like boring corporate jargon. Global compliance giant Aegis acquires niche risk management platform. Ledger Nest Systems for $500 million. But for anyone who clicked the link and scrolled down to the third paragraph, the world tilted on its axis. The article read, "The acquisition marks a massive exit for Ledger Nest's reclusive founder and majority shareholder, Diana Winfield. Winfield, a self-taught compliance architect, developed the proprietary algorithm RiskOS 6 years ago while working as a mid-level analyst. Sources close to the deal estimate Winfield's post-tax net worth following the buyout, combined with her retained equity, to be in the neighborhood of $200 million. I sat in my kitchen, the blue light of the tablet illuminating my face. My coffee had gone cold. It was out. The secret I had guarded for half a decade was finally public. People in this town thought I was a hermit. They thought I was a simple employee at Larkwell who kept her head down because she was ashamed of her lack of education. They did not know about the nights. They did not know about the 5 years of working from 7 in the morning until 5 in the evening at my day job, only to come home and work from 6 in the evening until 2 in the morning building Ledger Nest. They did not know that while Marjorie was telling her friends I was drifting, I was teaching myself Python and forensic auditing. I saw a gap in the market. Companies were losing billions because they could not track regulatory changes in real time. So, I built a system that could. I did not get lucky. I did not win the lottery. I outworked every single person who had ever looked down on me. I built a $200 million empire on a laptop with a cracked screen while eating instant noodles. All because I refused to ever ask Marjorie Winfield for a dime again. My phone buzzed. It was Renee. 200 million Diana. Tell me this is a typo. Tell me you are not richer than God. I typed back, not God. Just the gross domestic product of a small island nation. Renee replied, I am going to faint. Also, I am buying the expensive tequila tonight. You are paying. I smiled. But the smile faded as I watched the notifications start to roll in. The news was traveling. In a small town like Merrow Glen, money talks. But that much money screams. The whispers went from, did you hear about the crazy lady at the library? To, did you hear that Diana Winfield could buy the library and turn it into a personal closet in less than an hour? I opened Facebook. I needed to see it happen in real time. I went to Marjorie's profile. 10 minutes ago. Her pinned post had been the tearful, "My daughter has mental health issues" statement. It had 300 likes and dozens of comments offering prayers for my recovery. I refreshed the page. The post was gone. I refreshed it again. Her profile picture, which had been a somber image of a candle, was now a photo from 15 years ago. It was a picture taken at Disney World. I was 18, looking sunburned and tired, but Marjorie had her arm around me, smiling like the perfect mother. Then, a new status update appeared, so incredibly proud of my brilliant daughter. Diana. I always knew her genius would be recognized. We have always supported her quiet dedication. Family wins together. Proud Mom Tech. Genius my girl. I stared at the screen, feeling a wave of nausea so strong I almost choked. The audacity was breathtaking. She had pivoted so fast she must have gotten whiplash. Less than 48 hours ago, she had accused me of being mentally unstable and implied I was a danger to myself. Now, because the world knew I was worth $200 million, I was her genius. She was not just erasing the insults, she was rewriting history. She was trying to position herself next to the jackpot. She wanted people to think she was the nurturing soil from which my success had grown, rather than the drought that almost killed it. Then came the texts. First, it was my cousin Bethany, who hadn't spoken to me since Christmas of 2019. Cousin, oh my God, I just saw the news. That is amazing. We should grab lunch soon. I miss you. Then, my Uncle Robert, who once told me at a barbecue that I would never amount to anything without a degree. Diana, impressive work. I have a business proposition regarding a car wash franchise I would love to run by you. Let's talk numbers. And finally, Grant, who had screamed at me on the phone yesterday. Grant, who had told me I was tearing the family apart. Grant, who had let his mother tank my credit score. Hey D, crazy news. Look, sorry about yesterday. Stress is high. Hope you're good. Mom is really happy for you. We should all do dinner. My treat, I put the phone down on the table as if it were contaminated. They did not miss me. They did not love me. They smelled the money. It was like dropping a bucket of chum into shark-infested waters. They were circling, their eyes black and hungry, forgetting every cruel word they had ever said, because they thought money wiped the slate clean. They thought $200 million was a lot of money. They didn't realize that to me. It was armor. It was the wall I had built to keep them out, not the gate to let them in. I walked over to the window. I could see the driveway. It was empty, but I knew it wouldn't be for long. They would come. They would bring casseroles and old photo albums and sob stories about mortgages and debts. But I was not the girl who washed the football jersey anymore. I was the CEO of Ledger Nest. I dealt in risk analysis. And this family, they were a liability. The phone rang again. A standard voice call. I looked at the screen. The name flashing was Mom. I stared at it. The phone vibrated against the marble counter. A buzzing insect demanding attention. She was calling. She had seen the number. She had done the math. She knew that the cease and desist letter was now backed by a war chest deep enough to bury her in legal fees for the next century. She knew she had lost the power dynamic, so she was calling to negotiate, or to beg, or to pretend nothing had happened. I reached out. My hand hovered over the device. Part of me, the little girl who just wanted her mother to be proud, wanted to ignore it. I wanted to run. But the woman I was today, the woman who had built an empire in the dark, she wanted to hear exactly what Marjorie Winfield sounded like when she was afraid. I picked up the phone. I slid the green icon across the screen. I brought it to my ear. I didn't say hello. I just waited. Diana. Her voice came through the line. It wasn't the screeching harpy from the library. It wasn't the cold matriarch from the gala. It was sweet. It was warm. It was dripping with a sugary, desperate affection that made my skin crawl. My sweet girl, she said. I leaned against the counter, looking out at the trees, my face completely expressionless. $200 million. Mother. I thought, and you still think I'm cheap enough to be bought with a pet name? Daughter. The word hung in the air between us, transmitted across miles of fiber optic cable, but it felt sticky, like molasses poured over a razor blade. It was the first time she had called me that in 6 years without following it up with an insult or a demand. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was not the sharp, imperious bark of the woman who had terrorized the library. It was soft, trembling slightly at the edges, a perfect audio performance of maternal longing. I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, my other hand resting flat on the cold marble countertop. I did not speak. I let the words sit there, rotting. "Diana, are you there?" she asked, the sweetness faltering just a fraction. "I have been trying to reach you. I saw the news. Oh, honey, I miss you." I looked at the reflection of the trees in the window. I remembered the last time she told me she missed me. It was when she needed someone to drive her to get a colonoscopy because Grant was too busy playing golf. I took a slow breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. "Mother," I said, my tone as dry as a desert, "let us save time. Are you calling because you missed the daughter you called a failure 48 hours ago? Or are you calling because you saw the number 200 million next to my name?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then, the sound of a nervous laugh, tinkling and fake. "Diana, how can you say that money has nothing to do with family? I was overwhelmed with emotion when I read about your success. I always knew you had it in you." "You always knew," I repeated, glancing at the legal pad where I had written down my talking points. "Is that why you threw my math book into the garbage? Is that why you told the entire town I was playing pretend?" Marjorie sighed, a long, tragic sound meant to elicit guilt. "You have to understand, Diana, I did that for you. I was worried. I saw you sitting there with those teenage dropouts, and I panicked. I didn't want people to laugh at you. I didn't want them to think you were struggling. I was trying to protect you from embarrassment." I closed my eyes for a second, marveling at the mental gymnastics. "You were not protecting me," I said, my voice hardening. "You were protecting yourself. You were terrified that if people saw me studying for a GED, they would realize your perfect family portrait had a crack in it. You humiliated me to save your own face. Do not rewrite history. Marjorie, I was there." There was silence on the line. I could hear the faint hum of her refrigerator in the background. She was recalibrating. The concerned mother angle wasn't working, so she shifted gears. "Well, perhaps I was too harsh," she conceded, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have both made mistakes. Diana, families are messy, but we are still blood. And right now, well, things are complicated here, with the gala scandal. And your brother's car payments, we are in a bit of a tight spot. Here it comes. I thought, she continued, gaining confidence, now that you are in a different financial bracket, it would be a beautiful gesture for you to help stabilize the ship. Family supports family during hard times. It is what your father would have wanted." I looked at the iPad sitting on the counter next to me. The voice memo app was open. The red recording bar was pulsing, capturing every syllable. Miles had advised me to record any interaction under the guise of keeping personal business records, fully compliant with the one-party consent laws of our state. I decided to walk her right into the trap. "Help you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "You mean financially? Like how you helped me build my credit when I was 18. Marjorie paused. She sensed a change in the current, but she was too greedy to see the hook. "Exactly," she said, sounding relieved. "I always tried to look out for you. Diana, I managed things when you were too young to understand them." "You mean the account at First National Bank?" I asked. "The one opened in 2010. "Yes," she exclaimed. "I handled all of that paperwork for you. I knew you were busy with your little job at the diner. So I took the initiative. I wanted to make sure you had a safety net." I glanced at the credit report lying next to the iPad. The safety net that had been used to purchase $3,000 worth of custom silk drapes. "So, just to be clear," I said, leaning into the phone, "you signed my name on the application." "Because the bank records show my signature, but I was living in a garage apartment 3 miles away when that document was filed." Marjorie laughed nervously. "Oh, Diana, don't be so technical. I signed it on your behalf. It is what mothers do. I was managing the household. I needed to keep the lights on. And since you were living under my roof, I wasn't." I interrupted. "I had moved out 6 months prior." "Details," she snapped, her impatience leaking through. "The point is, I took care of it. And now, I think it is only fair that you take care of us. A small infusion of cash, maybe 500,000, would clear up the mortgage and get Grant settled. It is a drop in the bucket for you now." I felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over me. She had just admitted to it. She had admitted to signing my name. She had admitted to using the funds for the household. It was wire fraud. It was identity theft. And now, it was recorded. I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. I wanted her to sweat. "I am not going to give you $500,000. "Mother," I said quietly. Her tone shifted instantly. The sweetness evaporated, replaced by the jagged edge of the woman who had screamed at me in the library. "Excuse me. You are sitting on $200 million, and you are going to let your mother drown after everything I did for you, you ungrateful little—" "Stop." I cut her off. My voice was not loud, but it was absolute. "I am not giving you money," I repeated, "but I am going to give you a choice." "A choice," she spat. "Who do you think you are? I am the woman holding the recording of you admitting to federal bank fraud." I said. The line went dead silent. "I am recording this call." "Marjorie," I said, "and you just confessed to forging my signature to open a line of credit that you used for your own expenses. My lawyer, Miles, has the original documents from the bank. We have the handwriting analysis. And now, we have your confession." I could hear her breathing. It was fast, shallow, like a trapped animal. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I am your mother. You stopped acting like my mother a long time ago." I said, "Now, listen carefully. Here is the deal." I picked up the paper where I had written my terms. 1, I said, "You will repay the $12,000 you stole in my name, with interest. I don't care if you have to sell the drapes or Grant's car. You will clear that debt." 2, I continued, "You will issue a public, written apology to the Marrow Glen Adult Education Program. You will admit that your behavior at the library was inexcusable and that you support their mission. You will clear the air for the students you shamed. 3, you will sign a legally binding non-disparagement agreement. If you ever mention my name, my mental health, or my business in a public forum again, I will sue you for everything you own, down to the silver spoons." Marjorie found her voice. It was a high, thin screech. "You are blackmailing me." "No," I said calmly. "Blackmail is when you ask for something you don't deserve. I am asking for restitution." "You want to humiliate me," she hissed. "You want me to crawl. You want me to apologize to those losers at the school. Those losers are my peers." I said, "And yes, I want you to apologize. I won't do it," she said. "I won't let you control me. Then I will hand this recording and the file to the district attorney by 5 this afternoon." I said, "And Grant will have to visit you on weekends through a glass partition. Do you think your reputation in the church auxiliary can survive an indictment for identity theft?" I heard a sob. It wasn't a fake one this time. It was the sound of a narcissist realizing the mirror had shattered. "You are cruel," she wept. "You are a cruel, heartless girl. You are making me kneel." I stared at the phone. I thought about the library books on the floor. I thought about the 17 years of silence. I thought about the credit score that had kept me in a studio apartment for an extra 2 years. "No, Mother," I said, "I am not making you kneel. I am giving you the first chance you have had in 20 years to stand up like a decent human being." I looked at the clock on the stove. "It is 10 in the morning. I said, "Miles will email the documents to you in 15 minutes. You have until noon to sign them. If I don't see a signature by 12:01, I am driving to the police station." I did not say goodbye. I did not say I love you. I pressed the red button to end the call. I saved the recording. I labeled it "The Truth." Then I texted Miles. She confessed. "Send the papers." I put the phone down and picked up my coffee cup. My hands were shaking. Just a little. But I felt lighter. The cord was cut. She wasn't the giant monster in the closet anymore. She was just a woman who owed me $12,000 and an apology, and I was going to collect. The deadline of noon came and went. My email inbox remained empty. Marjorie Winfield did not sign the papers. Instead, she declared war, At 12:15, my phone began to vibrate with a ferocity that threatened to shake it off the table. It was not Marjorie this time. It was the flying monkeys. First, it was my Aunt Linda, posting a long, rambling paragraph on her timeline, tagging me. It breaks my heart to see a family destroyed by greed. Just because some people stumble into money does not mean they should forget the hands that fed them. Shame on you, Diana, for abandoning your mother in her time of need. Then came a text from a cousin I hadn't seen in a decade. I heard you are trying to sue your own mom. Really, after she raised you, that is low. Even for you. Marjorie had changed tactics. She realized she could not win on the facts. So she was trying to drown the facts in noise. She was spinning a narrative where I was the nouveau riche villainess, drunk on power, bullying her poor, aging mother who had made a few administrative errors out of love. She was banking on the idea that the town would value sentimental loyalty over forensic truth. I did not reply to Linda. I did not text my cousin back. I called Miles. She missed the deadline. I said, "File the fraud affidavit with the bank," and Miles released the press statement for the fund. 10 minutes later, while Marjorie was busy crying on the phone to her bridge club, a notification went out to every major news outlet in the county. The Diana Winfield Adult Learners Fund is officially open for applications. I did not just announce a charity, I published the bylaws. I set up a website that showed exactly where every dollar would go. I appointed an independent board of directors, including the head of the regional community college and a retired judge. The message was clear: I am not hoarding money, I am giving it away. I am just not giving it to her. It was a strategic silence. While she screamed about abandonment, I let the paperwork show my character. Then came the second blow. From a direction I did not expect. At 2 p.m, Renee called me. Her voice was shaking. "Diana, you are not going to believe who just walked into my office." Who, I asked, still watching the comments roll in on Aunt Linda's post. "Gary, from Prestige Event Rentals," Renee said. "He provides the tables and chairs for the gala every year." My ears perked up. What does Gary want? "He saw the news about the fund," Renee said. "He saw that you are auditing the gala's past finances." "Diana, he is terrified. He told me that for the last 3 years. Marjorie asked him to inflate his invoices by 20%. I sat up straight. 20%. "Yes," Renee continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She told him it was for an administrative slush fund to handle last-minute emergencies. He cut her a check for the difference every year. He thought it was standard procedure until he saw the clip of you at the gala. He thinks he is going to be arrested as an accomplice." I closed my eyes and exhaled a long breath. It wasn't just the florist. It wasn't just the consulting fee. It was everything. Marjorie had turned the charity gala into her personal ATM. She had been systematically looting the community for years. "He is willing to testify," Renee said, "but he is scared. Dee, he lives in this town. Marjorie can make his life miserable. Tell him that if he comes forward voluntarily, my lawyers will advocate for him as a witness, not a defendant." I said. Renee hesitated. "This is going to destroy her. Diana, if this comes out, she goes to prison. Not just for bank fraud, for embezzlement." I looked at the empty chair across from me in my kitchen. I pictured Marjorie sitting there, telling me I was useless. I am not the one destroying her. "Renee," I said gently, "she built a house out of dynamite. All I did was walk in with a flashlight. But the town—" Renee started. "Renee," I cut her off. "You do not need to stand with me. I can take the heat, but you need to stand with the truth. Do you want to protect the woman who stole from your students, or do you want to protect the students?" There was a long silence on the line. Then, Renee sighed. "I will tell Gary to call your lawyer." The net was tightening. Marjorie was running out of room to maneuver. At 4 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera. It was Grant. He looked disheveled. His tie was loosened, and he was pacing on my porch like a man waiting for a sentencing hearing. I opened the door but did not unlock the screen. "Grant," I said. "Diana, please," he said, pressing his hands against the mesh. "You have to stop this. Mom is losing it. She is talking about leaving town. Maybe she should." I said, "We can fix this." Grant pleaded, "Look, I talked to her. She is willing to apologize. She is willing to sign something, but you can't drag her into a legal mediation. You can't put this on the official record. It will kill Dad's reputation, too." I felt a flash of anger at the mention of our father. He had been a quiet man who worked himself to death while Marjorie spent his paycheck on appearances. Dad is gone. "Grant," I said, "and do not pretend you are here for his reputation. You are here because you realized that if the forensic accountants dig deep enough into her finances, they are going to find your name, too." Grant went pale. "How much did she give you?" "Grant," I asked softly, "from the gala money. Did she pay for that trip to Cabo last year? Or was it the down payment on your condo?" "I didn't know where it came from," Grant shouted, his voice cracking. "She just said she had some investments pay off. Ignorance is not a defense when the numbers don't add up." I said, "Let's just handle this in the house," Grant begged. "Just us. Family. We can work out a payment plan. No lawyers, no police." I looked at my brother. I saw the same fear in his eyes that I used to feel when Marjorie would storm into my room. He was a victim too. In a way, he was addicted to her enabling just as much as she was addicted to control. But I could not save him by enabling him further. "No. Grant," I said. "Why?" he demanded. "Why do you have to work so hard?" "Because in that house, I always lose," I said. I stepped back to close the door. "In that house, the truth is whatever Marjorie says it is," I continued. "In that house, I am the villain and you are the hero and she is the martyr. I am not playing on her home field anymore. If she wants to settle this, she meets me at the mediation table tomorrow morning. With a stenographer, I shut the door, I locked the deadbolt. I went back to my office and sat in the dark. I realized then that this was the only way it could end. If I accepted a private apology, if I let her cry and hug me and call me daughter again, it would be over. She would own me. She would use the daughter label as a beautiful silk noose. She would guilt me into paying her debts. Then she would guilt me into hiding her crimes. And eventually, I would be back in the kitchen washing the jersey, just with a bigger bank account. I had to break the bone to reset it. The email came through at 6. Miles forwarded it. "Counsel for Mrs. Winfield agrees to the mediation session at 9 tomorrow morning. She will be present." She was coming. I prepared my file. I organized the credit card fraud documents. I printed the affidavit from the event rental company. I downloaded the metadata from the gala invoices. But I kept one thing separate. I reached into my safe and pulled out the spiral-bound notebook I had rescued from the library floor, the one with the soda stain on the cover. I opened it to the back page. Most people thought I was just studying for the GED. Marjorie certainly did. She thought this book was just a symbol of my failure. She didn't know that on the last 3 pages. I had handwritten a timeline, years ago, before I left. I had started tracking her lies. Not the financial ones, the personal ones. The dates she claimed to be sick. The dates she claimed to be at charity events when she was actually at the casino across the state line. I had forgotten I wrote it until I picked up the book that day. It wasn't legal evidence. It was something worse. It was the psychological map of her manipulation. I tucked the notebook into my briefcase. The next morning, I drove to the law office in the city where the mediation was scheduled. I wore a white suit, sharp, clean, unapologetic. I walked into the conference room. Marjorie was already there. She was wearing a soft, pastel cardigan and a skirt that was slightly too big, making her look frail. She had minimal makeup on. She was playing the confused elderly mother role to perfection. Grant sat next to her, looking at the table. When I walked in, Marjorie looked up, her eyes filled with tears on cue. "Diana," she whispered, reaching a hand out across the mahogany table. I did not take her hand. I did not sit down immediately. I looked at her, really looked at her, for 34 years. I had been terrified of this woman. I had been terrified of her disapproval, her volume, her ability to turn the world against me. But looking at her now, surrounded by lawyers, trying to manipulate a situation she had already lost. I didn't feel fear. I didn't even feel hate. I felt clarity. I sat down, placed my briefcase on the table, and looked her dead in the eye. Save the tears for the jury. Mother, I said, we are on the clock. The air in the mediation room was filtered and cool, but Marjorie was sweating. She started the session exactly as I predicted. She clasped her hands on the table, leaned forward with a practiced look of contrition, and looked at the mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Henderson. I want to start by saying I am sorry. Marjorie began, her voice trembling just the right amount. I am sorry if Diana felt attacked at the library. Moms can be overprotective. I just wanted her to be better. I wanted to push her toward excellence. If my passion came off as aggression, well, that is just because I love her too much. You know how sensitive Diana has always been. She takes everything to heart. Grant nodded beside her, looking at the floor. He was hoping this narrative would stick. He was hoping we could hug it out and bury the felony charges. I did not speak. I did not roll my eyes. I simply reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick file folder. I slid it across the mahogany table toward the mediator. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice even. What you are hearing is a character defense. What I am providing is a forensic audit. I pointed to the first document. This is a credit application from 15 years ago. I continued. It was opened in my name. The address listed is my mother's home. I did not live there. I did not sign it. I pointed to the second document. This is a signature analysis from a certified handwriting expert. It confirms with 99% certainty that the person who signed this application is the same person who signed Marjorie Winfield's tax returns for the last decade. Marjorie's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Mr. Davis, picked up the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He read the analysis. Then, he looked at Marjorie. He did not look happy. That is just a misunderstanding, Marjorie said quickly, her eyes darting around the room. I was managing her finances. She was a child. I was 19, and I corrected her, and I was working 40 hours a week. I was not a child. I was a resource you decided to harvest. I reached into my bag again. This time, I pulled out the spiral-bound GED notebook. The cover still had the faint, sticky residue of the soda from the library trash can. Marjorie stared at it. She recognized it. You threw this in the garbage. Mother, I said, placing it gently on the table. You made a scene. You screamed that I was a failure for studying. I opened the notebook in my back pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper and a small USB drive. You thought you were throwing away a study guide, I said, but actually, you were almost throwing away the evidence. This drive contains the backup files of the gala invoices you altered. And this paper. This is the list of dates you claimed to be visiting sick relatives when you were actually withdrawing cash from the charity account at a casino ATM. Marjorie went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I kept the original copies in here because I knew you never looked inside my books. I said, you only ever looked at the covers. That was your mistake. Marjorie's lawyer whispered something urgently in her ear. She shook her head, her face flushing red. This is illegal, she snapped. Dropping the Sweet Mother Act. You hacked my files. I obtained them through the vendor portal I was authorized to access as the gala coordinator. I said, it is all admissible, but I am not done. I took out my phone. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker in the center of the table. This morning, you called me. I said, I pressed play. The recording filled the room. Marjorie's voice, sugary and fake, echoed off the walls. My sweet girl. I miss you. Then, my voice asked the question, are you calling because you missed the daughter you called a failure 48 hours ago? Or are you calling because you saw the number 200 million next to my name? And then, the pivot, the moment the mask fell, the moment she asked for $500,000 to stabilize the ship. I stopped the recording right after she admitted to signing the bank documents. The silence in the room was deafening. Mr. Henderson looked at Marjorie with open distaste. Grant had put his head in his hands. Even her own lawyer looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Marjorie looked at me. Her eyes were wide, panicked. She tried to summon tears, but they wouldn't come. The fear was too dry. "You set me up," she whispered. I sat back in my chair. "I gave you a choice. Mother, I asked you if you missed me or the money. You answered. Now, here is my answer." I slid a final document across the table. It was a settlement agreement. Option A. I said, "You sign this. You agree to repay the $12,000 to the bank. You agree to issue a public apology to the Adult Learning Center. You agree to a permanent non-disparagement clause. If you ever speak my name to the press or social media again, the penalty is $50,000 per infraction." Marjorie stared at the paper as if it were burning. "And option B?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Option B is that I walk out of this room, drive to the district attorney, and hand over the fraud file and the embezzlement evidence." I said, "And then I go home, order a pizza, and watch the news coverage of your arraignment." Marjorie looked at Grant. "Do something," she hissed. Grant looked up. His eyes were red. He looked at me, then at the evidence on the table. "Sign it, Mom," he said quietly. What? Marjorie gasped. "Sign it," Grant repeated, his voice cracking. "She has you. She has everything. Just sign it before she sends us both to jail." Marjorie looked back at me. She was searching for a crack. She was looking for the little girl who used to seek her approval. She was looking for the victim she could bully into submission. She didn't find her. She only found Diana Winfield, CEO. With a trembling hand, Marjorie picked up the pen. She did not read the document. She just signed her name, her real name, on the dotted line. The scratching sound of the pen on paper was the loudest noise in the world. It was the sound of a 20-year reign of terror ending. She pushed the paper back to me. "Are you happy?" she spat, her face twisting into a scowl. "You destroyed your own family." I picked up the document. I checked the signature. It was valid. I did not destroy this family. "Marjorie," I said, standing up and snapping my briefcase shut. I just stopped subsidizing the destruction. I walked out of the room. I did not look back. I walked through the lobby, out the heavy glass doors, and into the sunshine. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. That evening, I did not go to a celebratory dinner. I did not pop champagne. I drove to the community center. I walked into the basement classroom where the GED prep course was held. Renee was there, erasing the whiteboard. When she saw me, she stopped. She looked at my face, saw the peace in my eyes, and she knew. "Did you do it?" she asked. "It is done," I said. I walked to my usual desk in the second row. I sat down. I pulled out a brand new notebook. I placed my pens in a neat row. For the first time in my life, I wasn't studying to prove someone wrong. I wasn't studying to escape a label. I was studying because I wanted to learn. I opened the book. The page was blank and waiting. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I hesitated, then pulled it out. It was a text from Marjorie. "Daughter, please, I am sick over this. Call me." It was a test, a final, desperate attempt to see if the hook was still there. She was using the word that had always been my leash. I looked at the word daughter. It looked small on the screen. It looked powerless. I typed my reply. 3 short words. "My name is Diana." I hit send. Then I blocked the number. I put the phone away. I looked up at the board where Renee was writing a math problem. I picked up my pen. I took a breath, and for the first time in 34 years, the air filled my lungs completely. I was not Marjorie's daughter. I was not Grant's sister. I was not a dropout. I was Diana, and that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your kitchen, or maybe a quiet library? Let me know in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed seeing Diana reclaim her name and her power, please make sure to subscribe to the Veronica Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people who need to hear it. See you in the next one.